amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. My guest today is Professor Kim Wilkins, also known as the renowned and award-winning author Kimberly Freeman. Kim is an associate professor in writing and publishing at the University of Queensland and a chief investigator on the ARC-funded project Genre Worlds, Australia, Popular Fiction in the 21st Century. She is also the author of 31 novels and is published in more than 20 languages. Her latest novel, The Secret Year of Zara, Holt, is out now and a terrific read. Now, welcome, Kim.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Now, Kim, you grew up in Redcliffe in Brisbane, so tell us a little bit more about that time. I believe you were a little bit of a wild child.
Oh, oh, where did you hear that? Okay, so yes, I grew up in Redcliffe. It was very different then. Your listeners who know Redcliffe now will probably know it as quite a gentrified place with lovely cafe culture and that kind of thing. It was not like that in the 70s and 80s when I was a kid. It was a little bit rougher. And being a little bit rough was a really good way to survive. So I did try very hard to be a quiet, nerdy, bookish girl, but found that left me open to a bit of bullying. And so I rebranded myself in high school as a punk.
All right.
Of some
yes.
Yes.
Terrific.
And people left me alone after that. So.
Oh, fair enough. But you loved dancing as a child, and particularly Anna Pavlova was one of your people that you loved.
Oh yeah, I was obsessed with Anna Pavlova, but more from the point of view because I am not a good dancer. I remain a bad dancer. I was obsessed with her from the point of view of the novel that was bought for me, which was the life of Anna Pavlova, but written as a novel for children.
Right.
And I just absolutely loved that book. I loved it so much. And one of the images that really stayed with me, a very common image that we hear around ballet dancers, is that she loved dancing so much that she would dance until her toes bled.
Oh,
And
gosh.
for me, this idea that you could be so passionate about art
Yes.
that you would do it until you literally hurt your body really embedded itself very deeply in me. And while I did try, going to dancing and I was terrible at it and stopped very quickly, that idea that art is something you do with your body until it hurts you really stayed with me. And so, it kind of explains the sort of prodigious output and how many novels I've written, because before even my first novel was published, I'd written 10.
Right.
I started writing novels when I was, 9 years old or something.
Well, it helps. Yes, it helps that you're a touch typist, because you said you started in the workload sort of as a typist, and it is a great help as a writer, isn't it? Although sometimes I find that you leave your brain behind a bit.
It does mean you can get the words down faster.
Yep.
Though I remember somebody saying once, "Does that mean you put in too many adjectives?"
Oh,
I thought, well, that's actually quite a good question, because I can type so fast. Do I just type it all? But it has been really useful being a very quick touch typist as well.
And Kim, you took yourself back to high school, and then you went on, which is, as per Anna Pavlova, as you say, really, really sticking to it. You got your PhD. But when did you first realise that you wanted to be a writer?
I knew that I wanted to be a writer. I can't remember a time when I didn't want to be a writer. That's it. So I have no recollection of a time before wanting to write. I feel like, I was born with the usual range, the usual complement of human emotions. I could feel joy, I could feel love, I could feel anger. But I felt like I got this extra one, which I would call story. I got this sense of story that is so deep in my DNA that I can't remember a time when I didn't love it. And so I my mother and father obviously read to me, but as soon as I could pick up a crayon in my chubby little hands, I was writing stories. So I was telling them before I went to school. When I went to school, I started writing them. My mother still has my first little book that I ever wrote. It was just a section of a rainbow jotter, which I'd torn off and stapled up and written
Oh,
this little road safety parable.
oh,
And
how
I was
lovely.
I was 5 years old. So there wasn't ever a time when I didn't want to tell
You
stories, want to
knew
write.
which direction your life was going to take. Now, your first novel was The Infernal. That was published, Kim, in 1997.
Yeah.
So tell me how was Selwa involved there? Selwa Anthony? How did you go about getting that published?
Yeah, so and Selwa Anthony, who is my literary agent, was absolutely instrumental for sure. So I had written, as I said, 10 novels. Some of them were what you would call juvenilia. They would never see and will never see the light of day. I had written quite a turgid, very long fantasy novel in my teens. But some of them were, I knew I was getting close. I'd written about 4 or 5 where I started to think, I think I'm starting to get this now.
Right.
And then I had this idea for a novel that was set partly in the present, but also partly in the deep past. And these things were connected by the mythology around reincarnation. And so it was a supernatural story. It had supernatural things in it. Um, and I just had this feeling as I was writing it, I had this sort of sense of destiny, which is a very strange thing to say. I'm actually not particularly spiritual at all, but I just had this feeling that I was doing it right now. I knew what I was doing.
You'd got it.
And yeah, yeah. And about 4 or 5 chapters in, I met a writer who was also one of Selwa's writers, and I did a course with him at the Queensland Writers Centre. And I told him about my book, and he liked the sound of it, and he said, send me what you've got and I'll take it to my agent. So at that point, I only had 5 chapters, I think. So
Right.
I sent them to him and then just kind of like got on, thought, oh, wow, it would be amazing. Obviously, I'd heard of Selwa Anthony. But then it took a couple of months, I think, for her to get to it. By the
Right.
time she phoned me, I had another 5 chapters. So I had 10 chapters of a book that was eventually 30 chapters long. So I had a third of a book.
And was that published under Kimberly Freeman or Kim
No,
Wilkins?
no, no. This is my first book's published under my own name, Kim
Right.
Wilkins.
Yes.
And she phoned me on a Monday and said, I really like this and I'm going to take it to Random House. It wasn't finished. And I said, wow, that's amazing. That's great. And she said, now, darling, it's a waiting game. It's going to be a while before we hear back. She told me that on a Monday, and on a Tuesday they offered.
Oh, really?
Um, yes.
Wow.
And she told me, she said, oh, and they've offered this much money, but I've said no. And at the time I was a student
Yes.
and I was like, ah, take the money. But she said, no, no, darling, we can get more than that, which is such a Selwa thing to say.
I know. Yes.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
and that's how it played out. And this was the 90s. So I was home alone.
Yes.
Nobody I knew had a mobile phone. I had nobody to tell. I tried to on the landline call my mum and I couldn't get
Yes.
hold of her. And so I just ran next door and told my neighbor who I'd met once,
Oh, right.
but I had to tell somebody.
Oh, how wonderful. And that's where it all started. And then you
Correct.
went on to write under the name of Kimberly Freeman. And you've written so many wonderful books, Kim, under that name as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I never wanted to be just a writer of supernatural and fantasy stories. I love that genre, but I grew up reading that, and I also grew up reading, other books, just books about strong, incredible women who do incredible things,
Y-
right? That have, no supernatural aspects to it. So, but the publishing industry being as it is, they kind of wanted me to write the same thing. So I went to Selwa and I said, I've got this idea for a book, which is like the books that I used to love, in the 80s, like
Yes.
Women of Substance and Lace and, those kind of books. And she said, well, we could do that, but we might have to do it under a different name. And that is how Kimberly Freeman was born. And yes, 8 books later, she did quite well, don't you think?
Oh, she certainly has. But who, I should say, which name do you sort of prefer? Which genre do you prefer writing in? Or are
Oh,
they both?
that is like asking me to choose my favorite child. Uh, I
Too
think that
difficult.
probably when I'm writing the fantasy stuff, I get I get a bit of a spiritual connection to it because it is that kind of like, mythology and stuff like that.
Yes.
But when I'm writing Kimberly Freeman, I'm having so much fun. It feels like, I'm on a roller coaster. I'm just like, oh, and I can make this happen and I can make that happen. So they are, they're so much fun, those books.
And they're great fun to read, I might add. Now, Kim, you're not just a writer. You're so involved at the university as well. So give the listeners a little idea of what a normal day in your life is like.
Yeah, and yes, it's the bio that you have is slightly out of date. I am a full professor now,
All right.
and
I beg your pardon.
I'm actually the Associate Dean of Research in the Faculty of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences at UQ. So my day involves, I want to say meetings and emails, but my job involves building people's ability to get research funding and to do amazing research in the humanities and social sciences, basically. It's a dream job. I absolutely love it, but it doesn't leave me a great deal of time to write at the moment.
I can imagine it wouldn't, but they do say, the saying goes, if you want a job done, look for a busy person, and they'll get it done. It sounds to me as though you're certainly one of those.
Yes, I do like to keep busy. I like to keep myself distracted and bubbling along. And I feel like I bring a lot of creativity to that work too. So as I always say, if you're being creative at work, then all work is creative, which I like.
That's a terrific saying. Now, you're listening to Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald, and my guest today is Professor Kim Wilkins, also known as the popular author Kimberly Freeman. Now, Kim, I also write under a nom de plume, but I might add I'm not nearly as successful as you are. But Silva has managed to get me a couple of deals. But I find it a bit confusing as to, sort of particularly with social media, who I should be and how to do it. Do you find it complicated at all?
Yes, I did at first, especially because I'm the kind of person who really values authenticity. So like an authentic connection between myself and whoever I'm talking to. So if people call me Kimberly, I find that quite confronting, even though it's like very similar to my own name. And I always say, oh, just call me Kim. That's fair enough. That's a fine diminutive of Kimberly. So but what I've discovered is that, number one, the two audiences weren't as distinct as we all thought. A lot of people read both my books, both my kinds of books. And so I have just tried to engage as myself. Obviously, don't make a secret of the fact that, it's a non-plume. And I've just tried to retain that sort of sense of authenticity. As I said to you earlier, I love those two types of books for two very different reasons. And I can just tap into that authenticity that to connect with readers if I need to.
Fantasy is making, it's always been popular, but it's making a terrific comeback recently, isn't it? Particularly with young people.
Yes, as long as it's like super duper erotic.
Oh,
like
is it? Oh,
pornographic. Yeah. The fantasy that's big at the moment
yes.
is romantasy, which is a blend of romance and fantasy. And,
right.
the books are wild. And I mean wild on many, many levels.
Right.
Like very eye-opening for a lady of my advanced years.
But talking now, let's talk about a lady who certainly made an impression on my life and obviously on yours. Your latest novel, The Secret Life of Zara Holt. I mean, honestly, Kim, what a woman she was, and a great idea it was to write the book. I mean, I know a lot of it is true, but some of it, of course, is not. And tell me how you went or why you went about it, and then we'll go on to her life.
Yeah, so it may not all be true, but it's very truthy. So
I loved it. Yes.
So Zara Holt is probably better known as Harold Holt's widow, and Harold Holt, very famous in
Yes.
Australian culture as the Prime Minister that we lost at sea in 1967. So I was interested in finding out a little bit more about this woman because I heard tell that she was an interesting woman, and oh, my goodness me, she was a very interesting woman. And to be called Harold Holt's wife or Harold Holt's widow is to diminish an incredible life of a
Yes,
woman who was an utter trailblazer. She was a fashion icon. At one
absolutely.
stage, she presided over one of the top couture houses
Mm.
in this hemisphere. And she knew her mind. She was immensely creative. She was incredibly business savvy. And she put up with a lot because
Oh,
it was the 1950s and 60s.
but it wasn't
She
even
put up
that
with a
though,
lot.
Kim. She started her, which I couldn't get over, she started her first boutique in the 1920s.
Wow, when she was 19,
Yes,
19 with her best friend. She and her best friend said, let's do this. And they were so successful that she burnt out and had to sell the boutique. Which I find incredible. And she already knew Harry. That's the other thing. Sorry,
yes,
I call Harold Holt Harry because she did, and
yes,
I've only apprehended him through her eyes, right? So she and Harry met when they were teenagers, and they had a 20-year courtship and then 20 years of marriage. So he would not commit to her. And so she ran off and married somebody else, ran off and lived in India for a while, but they obviously couldn't keep away from each other. There was obviously a deep and abiding passion between them that kept throwing them back together. And ultimately they did marry.
yes.
And they had 20 years before Harry was had his accident.
I mean, she says herself in the book that she had a slightly awkward figure to dress. So she came up with her own inspiration of clothes and whatever. And that's, the wonderful boutique mag, it was called, that she and, as you say, and her friend opened and ran, and then opened another, that was in Melbourne and then in Sydney as well. But I loved a bit, you sort of say she ran off to India, but she actually married a British officer, didn't she,
That's
in the
correct.
Indian services. And I loved the part about her times there. My mother actually spent time in India in the 1930s, so I was able to relate to it a lot.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
it was extraordinary, wasn't it, that she and Harold, Harry, that they did hold the candle for each other, and then, of course, complicated by the fact that she met sort of somebody in between and had one child with him, and then went on to have the twins with Harold.
Yes, that's right. Though that was a sort of like a secret. The twins were a bit of a secret for many years until Tom Frame's biography, official biography of Harold Holt, revealed that, revealed sort
Yes,
of the first time that they were actually Harry's because she was married to her first husband when she fell pregnant.
that's
Um,
right.
which I think is just such an indicator of the fact that they couldn't stay away from each other. No matter that, I think Harry could have treated her much, much better.
I I
But
got that feeling reading the book, and I must admit I've read a biography of him as well and her. Yes, no, he should have committed himself, but he wasn't prepared to until he sort of felt he'd made it, did he?
well, that's what he said to her.
Mm,
I mean, do we believe it?
I do.
I wouldn't believe that if a man said that to me. But it was quite clear that she was besotted with him and she hoped for the best. And, women had different lives from us and they didn't have the freedoms that we have. And I just feel that she did the best that she could with this enduring love and with the times that she was given. And the fact that she was, quite bohemian, such a trailblazer, such a fascinating person. Like, I've not ever written a book before where the main character is a real person.
Right.
Um, and for me, she was so vivid and she was so in my head. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm not related to her or anything like that, but when I read her memoir, which was just, she wrote in the year after Harry disappeared. When I read her memoir, I just felt, I know you. I felt such
Yes.
a sense of connection to her. And I think maybe I'm similar to her in some ways. And that's why I could tell when she was, covering up that she'd actually had a terribly bad depressive episode. I
Right.
just got to feel for her. And
Yes.
that's ultimately what impelled me to write the book, because there were many reasons not to, right? I mean, she has family that is still
I was going to
alive.
say,
And
how did the family react to it? I think Silva said that you sent them a copy and waited for an answer, but and then you did eventually, and they were happy.
well, I mean, I have met one family member who was happy. I don't think he speaks for his entire family, and I understand
Yeah.
that. Certainly, it was a very, very rich and wonderful experience meeting her grandson, who is a beautiful human being, and who did feel very much that I captured the spirit of his beloved grandmother. And that is the kind of success that any writer just absolutely longs for. But it was also very strange for me meeting somebody who knew Zara, because to me she had become like a character in a book, like all the other characters in my books, who I love them all dearly. They're like, friends that you walk alongside for a couple of years and then have to let go.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I couldn't have anticipated that I would hear from her grandson, and for it to be such a warm welcome.
Oh, isn't
But
that?
I'm very careful not to say that. I'm
Yes.
sure that there might be divergent opinions in her family.
I mean, it just was a really fascinating insight. And did he really disappear? I mean, you'd have to sort of read Kim's book, I think, to find out, wouldn't you? There's always the mystery there, isn't there?
Yes, well, I think people like the mystery, and that is kind of like one of the things I think, and one of the reasons that the book is set up like it is if everybody else was imagining Harry was still alive, she definitely was.
Exactly, yes. I mean, that mystery will always, I think, be there in our minds. Now, Kim, just moving away from that for a little bit, you have a role with the Department of Defence and also regional councils. How does that work?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's through my research. So
Yeah,
as well as, I don't know if people understand, so I'll just explain. When you're an academic, people often ask you what you teach. I haven't actually taught for several years. You also do research. And my research is, quite interesting. So the work that I did with the Department of Defense was part of a team of science fiction writers who were working with Defense on how they can use science fiction writing techniques to imagine future scenarios for defense planning. So that's been a lovely project. We did a few different bits and pieces with them.
right.
And the regional councils, that's a project that's currently ongoing, which is we're part of, again, part of a team that's doing a large scale project around the kind of books that people are publishing in regional areas. So we think, when we think of Australian literature, we often think about the books that are published out of Sydney, like mine,
Yes.
or Melbourne. But in fact, since the means of publishing books have become much more available to people, we've discovered there's a whole cottage industry across Australia of people publishing books that are important to local communities, like local histories and memoirs and
Right.
children's books and novels set in the region, being independently published or published by very, very small presses. So we're trying to map that literary production and come up with a slightly different view on Australian literature.
Oh, that's a terrific idea because, I mean, there are so many stories out there. And if you are relying
Really.
on the mainstream publishers, you're not going to get it out there.
Look,
So,
I've got to say, like, you want a history of Sydney, I
um,
can hit you with 100 of them. You want a history of Winton,
yes,
it's a different story altogether.
exactly.
And it's important because that is one of the really key aspects of Australian history and culture, is how people live outside the metropolitan areas.
It certainly is. And now, Kim, what do you think? What is AI doing to our writers? How is that going to affect it, and how is it affecting it? Has it affected you so far? Have they stolen any of your writing that you know of?
All of it. Sorry, I don't like to call it what are they? The verb that they use is ingested.
Right.
So my books via Meta and Anthropic have been ingested for to train AI. And yes, that was done illegally because both of those companies got those books from a pirate website rather than buying them. So they should have at least done me the courtesy of buying my books for free. But there's a lawsuit in progress with Anthropic, which I'm a signatory to, and I presume there will be one against Meta.
Yes.
In terms of, I'm quite protected sort of economically because number one, I never earned that much from my writing. And number two, I have a very well-paying day job.
Yes.
And great superannuation. So my perspective on this is we may be seeing an AI bubble, or we may be about to see the first ever AI bestseller hit the shelves.
Right.
I don't know. But what I do know is that they cannot take the pleasure of writing away from me. So writing isn't just about the outcome. It's not just about the book that's produced at the end. Writing is the process. It's the reading that you do to come up with ideas. It's the sitting down and planning and the mashing together of ideas and the characterization and the historical detail, and it's the process. And if we just outsource all writing to AI, we will lose everything about that process, all of the joy of it and all of the knowledge that it produces. So
exactly,
they can't take process away from us.
No.
And given it's one of my greatest joys, I'm certainly not giving it up.
Oh, I should think not. I'm sure your readers would agree. Now, it's also terrific, Kim, that your books are out on audio because many of our listeners, of course, are sight impaired, and it's just terrific that they are out there now. If anybody does want to contact Kim, and I'm sure they will, it's www.kimberly, KIMBERLEY, Freeman, FREEMAN, .com. And you're also, of course, on Facebook and Instagram, aren't you, Kim?
Yes, sometimes. I mean, I am on them, but I'm terrible at social media.
It's very hard. Well, when you're so busy, and I can imagine, the job your work at the university, writing under two names, and then, of course, I imagine you would have had to do quite a big publicity tour for The Secret Year of Zara Holt.
Yeah, there has been a lot of publicity, but yeah, it's all winding down now, and that will give me some headspace to think about what I want to work on next.
Oh, terrific! And I'd highly recommend that book to anyone. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, Kim. It was really really fun.
Yes, it was meant to be fun. Yeah,
and it was fun, definitely. Sadly, we are running out of time, and Paul is waving through the window at me. But thank you so much for being my guest, Professor Kim Wilkins, and also known as the award-winning author Kimberly Freeman. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. And thank you, Paul, for producing.
Thank you.
And the program that we have just recorded is in the studios of 4RPH Reading Radio Brisbane for syndication around Australia. It will also be available on my YouTube channel, Lots to Chat About, with Rosemary Peterswald. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
And thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.